to help local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden administration. Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants who have been dropped off by the Biden administration to Washington, D.C.
Governor Abbott making that announcement today. Texas will send migrants from the Texas border to the very steps of the Capitol.
Well, it's just ridiculous.
That was a reaction that Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia had after Governor Abbott announced his new immigration plans today.
Texas will be taking its own unprecedented actions this month to do what no state in America has ever done in the history of this country.
He has ordered the Texas Division of Emergency Management to bus or charter flights and transport immigrants to the nation's capital, only after they're processed and released by the Department of Homeland Security.
We are sending them to the United States Capitol, where the Biden administration will be able to more immediately address the needs of the people that they are allowing to come across our border.
This is just another of his series of political stunts. He is more worried about mobilizing his base and getting reelected than he is about taking care of people here in Texas.
The mockery of the seriousness of people who are fleeing a crisis made by this governor is shameful.
Meantime, Texas Governor Greg Abbott making a similar move, sending 2 buses with migrants to the vice president's residence in Washington, D.C. Abbott had been busing migrants to the nation's capital, but the buses had been dropping off migrants around D.C.'s Union Station.
A bus of migrants have been transported. Apparently, that bus arrived at Union Station earlier this afternoon and has since been confirmed by the governor of Texas, who tweeted a short time ago that Texas has just dropped off the first bus of migrants in Los Angeles, and I quote, "Small Texas border towns remain overrun by overwhelmed because Biden refuses to secure the border. LA is a city of migrants seek to go to, particularly now its leaders approved its self-declared sanctuary status," unquote.
Texas has sent another bus of migrants away from the state, this one arriving in Chicago last night. It comes after the state has sent more than 8,000 migrants to New York and Washington, D.C.
But let me also say this. Shame on Governor Abbott. What he is doing is immoral, unpatriotic, and it defies the values of who we are as Americans.
Wednesday morning, 3 more buses filled with migrants arriving in New York City bring sharp condemnation from New York's mayor on Sunday.
This is horrific. A political stunt by Governor Abbott. He's unfortunately using human beings as political pawns.
In Washington, D.C., more than 5,500 migrants and asylum seekers have been transported to the nation's capital from Texas, prompting D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request assistance from the National Guard, a request denied by the Pentagon, according to a letter reviewed by NBC. As for Texas's reasoning, in a statement, Governor Abbott says, quote, "In addition to Washington, D.C., New York City is the ideal destination for these migrants who can receive the abundance of city services and housing that Mayor Eric Adams has boasted about within the sanctuary city."
Before we began busing illegal immigrants up to New York, it was just Texas and Arizona that bore the brunt of all of the chaos and all the problems that come with it. Now the rest of America is understanding exactly what is going on. And then early on, when the mayor began complaining about just getting a small trickle of what Texas has to deal with all the time, I sent him a letter. And I invited him to come down to the border and see firsthand the chaos that exists in Texas.
Some, including the mayor of New York, have accused you of using migrants as political pawns. The mayor said to me in my interview with him, quote, "What the Texas governor is doing is anti-American. You have a person who is using those who are seeking refuge as political showmanship. He thinks this is a theatrical performance, and this is not."
So he didn't say that to President Biden when President Biden was flying people from Texas to New York. And so he's really nothing more than a hypocrite. He's playing politics with all of this. He's also being a hypocrite because New York City is a self-declared sanctuary city. And so why he's ever complaining for one moment about these people being bused into a city goes against his own self-declaration of being a sanctuary city.
New York City's growing humanitarian crisis, the shelter system slammed by an influx of migrants. The new calls for federal help. I guess Greg Abbott was right. He said once he got blue cities to deal with this, that they would be very upset at the federal government.
I don't think this is the place that they need to stay permanently. I hope we find them better shelter, but I'm very glad that they're here, and I'm glad that my neighbors have been here to welcome them.
We need leadership from President Biden, period. Democrats are looking bad right now in New York State, and that's unacceptable when we have to win at least 4 congressional seats to take back the House. So hopefully the president is listening.
Law of Sanctuary City was in place long before I became mayor. I'm following the law. As a law enforcement person, you know we follow the law. We're now in court today, asking the judge to revisit this law to deal with this humanitarian crisis.
Where the heck is the President of the United States?
That is a good question, and I think we all should be asking, why is this happening to a city that was turning itself around and will continue to do so? This should not be happening to New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, and the other big northern cities, and really it should not be happening to El Paso or Brownsville, Texas. No city should be carrying this burden. This is a national problem, and it needs a national solution. The national government has turned its back on New York City.
You know, the city is being destroyed by the migrant crisis, and none of my folks came to Washington, D.C. to fight for the resources that's going to undermine every agency in our city.
The mayor's saying it's taking an economic toll on the city, having already spent $817 million on housing and services for asylum seekers as of the end of March.
Our cup has basically runneth over. We have no more room in the city, and we need help. Finally, we need the federal government to lead a decompression strategy at the border so cities and states across the nation can do their part to shelter asylum seekers. Because cities like New York, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, and El Paso cannot be left to shoulder a national crisis without the proper aid. Again, if we don't get the support we need, New Yorkers could be left with a $12 billion bill.
As of today, close to 5,600 families with children are living in state-funded shelters, hotels, dorms, and other emergency facilities across Massachusetts. That figure is 80% higher than it was just 1 year ago. It represents more than 20,000 people, growing every day. These families include newborns, very young children, and expecting mothers. It's more families than our state has ever served, exponentially more than our state has ever served in our emergency assistance program. These numbers are being driven by a surge of new arrivals in our country who've been through some of the hardest journeys imaginable. They are the face of the national, international migrant crisis. They're here because where they came from is too dangerous to stay. They're here because Massachusetts has and will always be a beacon of hope, compassion, humanity, and opportunity. They're here because, like any of us, they would do anything, endure any hardship to protect and support the people they love, especially their children. Massachusetts has met these families with compassion and resourcefulness. We remain unwavering in our commitment to being a state and a people of compassion, safety, opportunity, and respect. But the increased level of demand is not slowing down. And due to both a long-standing shortage of affordable housing, as well as delays and barriers to federal work authorizations, we find ourselves in this situation. And it's unsustainable. For this reason, today I am declaring a state of emergency in Massachusetts.
Who could have predicted that?